It's time for more politics and laundry. I wanted to talk about what anarchism looks like in practice because I think there's a pretty coherent vision for a world that we'd like to live in that uses anarchist philosophy in a natural way. So, anarchism is the idea that we should not use coercion, violence, threats in order to control people's behavior, that we can just allow society as a whole and communities, specifically local communities, in order to let people live their own lives, and they are able to get together as equals and organize and work on projects together, share resources, but no one is being forced to do that through some sort of, single glorious leader or being forced into a particular situation. Weirdly enough, libertarian and anarchist thought patterns are pretty similar in some regards, but the big difference is that libertarians have a tendency to ignore how one person's actions affect another person, and so it's more of a might equals right, which ends up being in practice the exact opposite of allowing everyone freedom. So yeah, really interesting political philosophy, but that's all it is a philosophy. So how do we actually practice and start building this kind of utopian future today? It's important to point out that from a historical perspective, we are already living in a utopia. So the idea that we can make huge improvements in people's quality of life, that we can create systems that are more just than they used to be, that's not fantastical. That's the world that we're already living in, and that we can continue to improve the quality of life, the amount of freedom, and the amount of justice in the world. And that's really just a continuation of the same historical trend. So this is entirely doable. So I want to talk about tool libraries and more in general, the library of things, because I think it really does a great job of explaining how this would look like in your day-to-day life, how it would look like in your community. So the idea is that instead of going to a store run by a corporation and using money to purchase products that were created by that corporation in order to be used temporarily by you and then discarded, we can instead take all of the items that we already have or items that we are capable of making and put them into libraries to be used and reused by the community. And this is such a simple idea. It's literally just use the library ethos that we already use with books, but use it with tools, use it with clothes, use it with vehicles, use it with furniture. There are all of these things that we have a hard time getting access to, use for a short period of time, and then they're basically wasted, right? Oftentimes we end up throwing away things that are perfectly good because we don't have any more use for them, or they, sit around resting in your garage forever and never actually get used. Like we've all been there before. There's all sorts of things that we know, in point of fact, we're not really that well used, not well utilized. So the idea is that we can get a lot better utilization and stewardship of resources by handling it as a community. So what this would look like for, let's say you in particular, is that you get together with your neighbors. Communication is key, and you talk with them about what sorts of things you have a surplus of. They should be things that are sturdy and reusable and relatively expensive. And the reason you want all three of those is that basically the more expensive the object is, the bigger kind of value gained in offering it to other people, right? It means that they can't normally get access to it. And this is the idea behind makerspaces, is oftentimes makerspaces have machines that cost tens of thousands of dollars. So like, it doesn't make sense for one person to have that, both in just the barrier of entry, but also like the size and things like that. But if you think about, for example, a lawnmower, what percentage of the week is your lawnmower actually being utilized? And that's like a, what, $300 item, right? They're not cheap, but they're pretty durable. They can last for, 20, 30 years. I've seen lawnmowers last. And the thing about them is that a lot of why they break down has to do with age and neglect and not actual use. So you can go from what, 1%, probably like 0.1% utilization, like how much time they're being used, to more like 20% utilization. All of a sudden we've got 200x more usage out of it, which means you need 200 times less of it, right? And now all of a sudden you've got this situation where you're utilizing resources much better. And so then look, hey, if we're doing regular maintenance on it and it only lasts for 2 years, the effective lifespan of how many times it got used before it breaks down and becomes like completely unrepairable is way better, right? So the idea that capitalism is efficient at using resources or efficient at locating, who should have resources or anything like that is actually complete nonsense. It's basically propaganda, right? And the reason that it's propaganda is that capitalists have some very specific things that they're trying to optimize for. And it has to do with resource extraction and value capture. And neither of those things are human well-being. So if you actually want to optimize for human well-being, you're going to end up with very different solutions that use a lot less resources, because less on the resource extraction of capitalism, and they monetize less things, right? So you don't necessarily need to be paid for someone, checking out a tool, using it for a little bit, and then returning it unharmed, right? You might want to be paid for being the custodian. That would make sense. But so even if we're monetizing being a custodian of an item or a library of things for a neighborhood, that's fine. That's a completely legitimate job. People, pay from the community resources for someone to do that, and then they basically act like almost like a handyman, right? But that's going to be a lot less monetization than if you were to add up all of the different stores and services and all of that it would be replacing, right? So what this looks like is actually a huge reduction in the GDP, right? Because capitalism is trying to optimize the GDP. But the question is that actually what we want to optimize? And I would say the answer is no. If we can have better quality of life with 10x or 100 less resource extraction, damage to the environment, and all of that stuff, and even labor, right? Then that is what I would call efficient. Even if by the capitalist metrics, the numbers don't look so good because, hey, look, no one's buying our new shiny thing. You're also going to find that this ethos will lead you to build products differently. So as an example, I'm doing some of our laundry right now, and some of our laundry is store-bought stuff, and some of our laundry is handcrafted. And I have noticed the value, the actual quality of the stuff which is handcrafted, which, we're amateurs, right? Not a big corporation. But the quality of the handcrafted stuff is in a completely different ballpark. The handcrafted stuff is so much better. And so, if I have a t-shirt like this, I'm going to burn through this t-shirt in less than 5 years, most likely. And it's because it's designed to be made out of cheap material. Whereas if I get a bolt of linen, it's expensive, right? Like getting a hold of linen, getting a hold of the actual like raw materials, and using like high quality threads, all of that stuff is a lot more expensive. So you end up with shirts, tunics, pants that are closer to $100, $200, maybe even $300 for a single article of clothing. But it's way more durable. It's repairable because you made it in the first place, and it's the natural fibers breathe so much more nicely than synthetic fibers. There's just no comparing the quality difference. And so the more I've gotten access to, natural handcrafted stuff, the more I'm like, wow, I'm never going back. And so more and more of our stuff is gradually getting to be handcrafted. And, that's a really cool trend because it's also environmentally friendly. It's kind of reclaiming parts of our heritage that we've lost. Because we're increasing resiliency, and either interdependence or independence. It's kind of a cool community thing, people that build their own stuff. But I'm not saying that we necessarily need to manufacture our own lawnmowers or something like that. For something like that, you want to have at minimum national level sufficiency and maybe even state level sufficiency, right? But we would need so much less production capacity if we were just smarter about how we utilize the resources that we actually produce. And that's really the advantage to the Library of Things economy, is that you just need a lot less stuff if you reuse it. And it's something that doesn't just benefit you, it benefits the entire community that you're in. And I think it'll have a lot of, kind of knock-on social benefits, that it brings people together and gives them a sense of personal responsibility. Because, if someone breaks a tool that I was hoping to use next week, like, I want to know who did that, and encourage them to take better care of things, right? And it makes people that are artisans so much more valuable in our society, because now they're directly contributing to the community that they're in. And I find that to be a really wonderful thing, because right now we're in a situation where our society is really devaluing artisans. They're devaluing crafters, and they've already devalued and gotten rid of most of the people that are in manufacturing, and that's left us in a very vulnerable position, that we're dependent on people that are either unreliable or hostile, or just we could lose contact with them. And so we would be much, much better off if instead of taking the libertarian approach of like, oh, I don't need anyone else, just needing your community and sharing resources amongst the community, and then you get all the benefits of that kind of individualism, but also the benefits of relying on other people that you have a relationship with, instead of relying on people that are, they're in another country, they're anonymous, there's no accountability. And so I see a library of things as the natural, responsible alternative to the way that we're currently handling goods, manufacture, distribution, the whole thing. If we had a library of things, if that was just our way of doing things, most of our other problems would just dissolve away, right? I want you to actually take some time to think about how many problems that would address. All right, we'll look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.